not only that, the viruses comes under this particular family are responsible for many number of lifestyle associated infections, and our lifestyle will cause for the spread of these infections. So today we will learn about this particular topic, and before going to the topic proper, as usual, let us have a case scenario related to this viral infections. One is a 3-year-old girl was brought to the dermatology OPD for the evaluation of a wart-like lesions on her left thumb, just proximal to the base of thumbnail. It's a cluster of small vesicular ulcers with faint area of surrounding erythema. The remainder of the child's examination is normal. It has been present for 3 or 4 days with little pain. A week prior, the child had fever blisters, means blisters or vesicular lesions with fever around her mouth, all of which have resolved now. She has no warts on any other part of the body. On examination, baby is appearing well and sitting on her mother's lap and sucking her thumb. I think at least some of you might have this particular habit during your childhood, right? So what is the relation between these kind of lesions and sucking of thumb? So while the child is sucking her thumb, there is a possibility for some aberrations on the mucocutaneous junctions of the nail bed, and which may give the entry for certain microorganisms. So these are the viruses which can go through, can get into the body through this aberrated mucocutaneous junctions and cause for the lesions. So if you see the historical milestones of this particular viruses, they are prevalent and early as ancient Greek times, and even Hippocrates described the cutaneous spreading of these lesions. And Shakespeare, you all know, that's very good poet. In her book Romeo and Juliet, he mentioned about these lesions which can transmit among the individuals. 1893, Vidal recognized the human transmission of these lesions. That means one person to other person. And in 1919, Lowenstein confirmed by experimentally the infectious nature of certain viruses. Those are herpes simplex virus. And in 1920s and 30s, the natural history and range of infections produced by these particular viruses were studied. And by the 1940s and 50s, by the invention of the egg inoculation techniques in 1940s, the research was established how these viruses can produce the disease. These are the historical milestones about this particular viral infections. Overnight, these viruses were not identified and their pathogenesis were not established, and their transmission is not told by 1 or 2 authors. For a period of decades, and during centuries, it has been done, and now the people have come to one particular idea about this particular viruses. And now we'll come to the family proper, that is Herpes viridae family, which is a large family of DNA viruses when compared to the other DNA viruses. And the members of this Herpes viridae family are known as herpes viruses. The name has been derived from the Greek language. In Greek, herpion means to crawl or creep. So the lesions from the site of origin, they can creep or crawl from the site of involvement to other part of the skin or mucous membranes. That's called creeping of lesions or creeping of eruption. That's why it's known as herpes viruses. And remember, these viruses have got wide range of hosts. They not only infect the human beings, also can infect the animals. But here in this particular topic, I am going to talk about the viruses causing the human disease. And the most important features of this particular viruses, most important feature is latency. I think all of you know the what's the meaning for latent infection. Soon after their entry into the body, the viruses can retain in the tissues, or they may hide in the tissues and cause for the multiplication of the viruses when the opportunity comes for this particular viruses. That is nothing but latent infection, and this latent infection responsible for reactivation of the virus when the cell-mediated immunity in the host is reduced, and the reactivation of this virus results in relapse of the disease. So this is very important property of this particular viral infection, that is latent infection. Never expect that these viruses can produce the disease soon after their entry into the body or after the completion of their incubation period. Even after incubation period, these viruses sometimes may not produce the clinical manifestations, just they hide in the tissues and they can reactivate it when the cell-mediated immune response is decreased in the host by various means or various reasons, and results in the clinical manifestations in the form of relapse. And the morphology of this virus, if you see, they are spherical viruses with icosahedron capsid. Can anybody tell what are the other viruses causing for icosahedron capsid? I think in the last class also you had one class with icosahedron capsid, and that's one has responded. Yes, adenovirus, very good, very good. Many of the people answered 38, 138, 183, 211, 26, and so on. So many people, 281, 136, 229, very good. All are given right answers. Everyone given, yeah, so many people still giving. Anyhow, because of lack of time, I can't respond to all your, but very good. So this is icosahedron capsid, and it is enveloped virus with the lipoprotein, and the tegument is present. If you see here in this virus, between this particular envelope and this capsid, in between these two, you can see an area. This is the area. This is called matrix, otherwise called a tegument, and this has got an important role in the pathogenesis of this particular virus, especially in the immunological responses. It has got its own role. And another important thing is this virus has got the double-stranded DNA. This has got double-stranded linear DNA. And the very important property of genome of this virus is this genome consists of several repeated genes. That means that the same type of genes will get repeated in its gene sequence, which is a unique feature of this particular virus. And remember, there are so many viruses are there in the herpes viridae family. Among them, there is no DNA homology. That means the DNA similarity may not exist among all the viruses, except few viruses like herpes simplex virus 1 and herpes simplex virus 2, and human herpes virus 6 and human herpes virus 7. These 1 and 2, herpes simplex virus 1 and 2, human herpes virus 6 and 7 have got some DNA homologies, whereas that means DNA similarities are there, whereas other viruses are not having the DNA similarity. That means the infection with one virus can't give the protection from other member of the same family. But that is possible in case of herpes simplex virus 1 and 2, human herpes virus 6 and 7. That means if anybody infected with either 1 or 2 can get the resistance to other virus. And in the same way, the 6, the resistance to 7 also. And another important property here to remember is the replication. If you take the replication, once the virus starts replicating in the nucleus of the infected cell, host cell, this linear DNA gets encircled, and then it causes for the multiplication. This is called rolling circle mechanism of multiplication. A replication of the genome will occur in the rolling circle mechanism, which is also very important property of this particular virus. One is repeated genes is a unique feature, and rolling circle mechanism is another unique feature of this particular viral infection, which has to remember. And now, as far as the classification is concerned, remember the I am going to classify only the human herpes viruses. I am not going to classify all the viruses comes out of this particular family. The only viruses which are causing for the human disease, I am going to classify now. So these viruses which can cause for the human disease will be classified into 3 subfamilies. Herpes viridae family divided into 3 subfamilies. One is alpha herpes viridae, beta herpes viridae, and gamma herpes viridae. Like this, 3 subfamilies are there, and each members of each subfamily have got their own features. Like if you take the if you take the replication time and result, and site of latent infection, and scientific name and the common name for each members of each subfamily. If you take these alpha members of this alpha herpes viridae, here the replication time is, the members of the alpha herpes viridae replication time is very short, that is 12 to 18 hours, and the infected cells gets lysed, so it's called cytolytic activity. And the site of latency of these alpha members of alpha herpes viridae are in the neurons. And the members of this alpha herpes viridae are human herpes virus 1, which is popularly now known as herpes simplex virus 1. Next one is human herpes virus 2, also known as, sorry for the spelling mistake here. This is human herpes virus 2, that is that is nothing but herpes simplex virus 2. Human herpes virus 2, here also this is a wrong. Herpes virus, human herpes virus 2, or herpes simplex virus 2. Correct that one. And third one is human herpes virus 3, otherwise known as varicella zoster virus. So here just make a correct, herpes simplex virus 2. And another one is varicella zoster virus. That is the common name given for that, but original name or scientific name for that particular thing is human herpes virus 3. Next, let us go for the beta herpes viridae subfamily. Here the replication time is more than 24 hours, and the infected cells will undergo for the large size or big size, that's why it's called cytomegalic cells. The cells infected with the beta herpes viridae members will undergo for big change, and they maintain the latency in the kidneys and glands. The glandular epithelial cells and the kidneys, they can maintain their latent infection. And the very important member of this family is human herpes virus 5, otherwise called cytomegalovirus. And this is about this particular family. And in this beta herpes family, we have another group of organisms. They are which are having the multiplication or replication time again more than 24 hours. But in spite of making them to the infected cells bigger or larger in size, they can cause for the proliferation of the cells. Certain viruses comes under this beta herpes viridae subfamily are responsible for proliferation of the lymphocytes, especially the infected T lymphocytes will undergo for the proliferation. The important viruses comes under this particular subfamily are human herpes virus 6 and human herpes virus 7. And these are the 2 important viruses responsible for this particular thing. And next one is gamma herpes viridae, that is subfamily. Here the replication time is variable, and the infected cells will undergo for proliferation. So the infected lymphocytes will undergo for the proliferation, and they infect the B lymphocytes. Remember, the members of beta herpes viridae, that is human herpes virus 6 and 7, will infect the T lymphocytes, whereas human herpes virus 4 and human herpes virus 8 will infect the lymphoid cells, especially the B lymphocytes. So in this particular gamma herpes virinae subfamily, we have the two important viruses. One is Epstein-Barr virus, that is a common name, but scientific name is human herpes virus 4. And human herpes virus 8 is also known as Kaposi's sarcoma associated virus. So this is the classification of the herpes viruses which can infect the human beings. Now, what is the replication of this virus? This virus can grow in the embryonated egg also. They can grow in the embryonated egg, and in this embryonated egg, they can produce small, white, shiny, non-necrotic pox. Can you tell me which virus can produce the necrotic pox, which you learned in the last class? I think most of the people can answer. It can produce the non-necrotic pox. But which virus produces the necrotic pox on chorioallantoic membrane of? Yes, let me see who the answering. No, adenovirus. No, adenovirus. Yes, pox virus. Congratulations to 1258. Yes, vaccinia and 1038 1136. Well done. Yes. Yes, pox virus is the right answer, not the adenoviruses. So, on chorioallantoic membrane of the embryonated egg, these viruses will produce a non-necrotic pox. You can see here, these are all non-necrotic pox. Here you can see the non-necrotic lesions are chorioallantoic membrane. Not only that, this virus can infect the cell line cultures also, like HeLa cell line cultures and Hep2 cell line cultures and monkey kidney cell line cultures also. We can see the growth of these viruses, which will be seen in the form of cytopathic effects. The cytopathic effects seen in this particular HeLa and Hep2 cell lines or monkey kidney cell lines are nothing but syncytial formation. The syncytium is formed. That means the bridges between the two cells will get over because of the infection and forms the multi-nucleated giant cells. You all know that each cell will have its own nucleus and individual nucleus in the individual cell. But because of the infection, the boundaries of the cells will get aborted and results in a single cell which consists of many number of nuclei. That is, syncytial formation with multiple nucleated giant cells is the typical of this herpes virally infected cells. And now let us see this one, the immune response to human herpes virus. Remember, they are neuroinvasive and neurotoxic, and especially the human herpes simplex virus. Human herpes virus 1 or herpes simplex virus 1 and 2, and they are neuroinvasive and neurotoxic. And another important thing is the replication of the virus causes for the cytolysis. Remember, all the infected cells will undergo for the cytolysis. That's a very important point to remember as far as this virus is concerned. All these damaged cells will get repaired by the natural killer cells, and the CD8 cells gets activated, and the CD8 cell response will cause for the occurrence of clinical manifestations. And one more important thing to remember about this particular virus is this viral glycoproteins will stimulate the T lymphocytes and produce the antibodies through the B lymphocytes. These activated T lymphocytes will activate the B cells, and these B cells will produce their concerned antibodies. The concerned antibodies will be produced. So that for all these things, the responsible agents are nothing but the glycoproteins, the viral glycoproteins present on its envelope. On the capsid and also envelope. And another thing is antibodies which are produced do not prevent the recurrence. Remember, they do not prevent the recurrence. Only thing is they can reduce the severity of the disease. So the antibodies can reduce the severity of the disease but it can't prevent the recurrence, which is a very important feature of this particular viral infections because of reactivation of the virus from the latency. And cell-mediated immune response and resulting inflammatory response after infecting the cells are main reasons for the occurrence of clinical manifestations in this disease. Remember, the clinical manifestations of the disease are produced by the action of cell-mediated immune response and inflammatory response. And the next one is the pathogenesis. The reservoir is always human mucosa and the neuronal ganglia, where they are maintaining the latent infection. And transmission in case of herpes simplex virus 1 by direct skin contact or wet kissing, because large quantities of the infected material has to get transmitted from the infected individual to the another individual to produce the disease. That's why natural kissing won't do any harm, but wet kissing always causes for the transmission of large number of viruses from the infected person to the other individual. And HSV2, that is herpes simplex virus 2, otherwise called human herpes virus 2. And this will get transmitted by means of sexual contact. That's why usually people will say HSV1 is responsible for the lesions above the waist. Above the waist, that means oral cavity gets involved, whereas HSV2 mainly responsible for the clinical manifestations below the waist. That means genital tract gets involved. And remember, the infecting sites with this particular virus is mucous membranes, cutaneous and mucocutaneous junctions. So either mucous membranes of the oral cavity or genital tract, cutaneous of the face or the perianal region, and also the mucocutaneous junctions of the perianal region and the oral cavity where you can see the lesions. And one most important point to remember, sorry. There is a bit technical error again. Just wait a minute. My screen shares here. Screen shares. Yeah. That's good. Okay. Right. And one more thing is, since this is an what we call enveloped virus, all the enveloped viruses are which are consists of lipids. So this is a lipid virus. Envelope is made up of lipid. So this is always sensible to the ether and also the chloroform, bile salts and heat labile. So when you expose this virus to the high temperatures, we can kill these viruses, and by exposing them to the ether substances, we can kill this virus, because this ether is a lipid solvent. So once the lipid layer is, envelope is destroyed, the virus also will get destroyed. That's why always we have to use either ether or chloroform to kill these viruses. And next, these viruses will enter the body through the skin or mucous membranes and invade the local nerve endings. And in the local nerve endings, they replicate for the certain period, and by means of retrograde axonal flow, they reaches the dorsal root ganglia. From the site of entry, they reaches the dorsal root ganglia and undergoes the latency. So they can maintain the latency in their concerned ganglion. So usually herpes simplex virus 1 will maintain the latency in the trigeminal ganglion, whereas HSV2 will maintain the latency in sacral ganglion. So once they maintain the latency here, if the individual is infected and having the viruses in those particular areas, whenever the decreased cell-mediated immunity is decreased, the virus starts replicating. When this cell-mediated immunity will get decreased, certain conditions like physical or emotional stress, any kind of stress or trauma, fever, and when the person exposed to the extremes of sunlight, in these conditions, usually the cell-mediated immunity will get decreased. When the cell-mediated immunity get decreased, virus starts replicating. When the virus starts replicating, which results in the occurrence of clinical manifestations. So once the virus gets replicated, the virus will again from there, from the dorsal root ganglion, from their particular dorsal root ganglion, they spread centrifugally. They spread to the skin. They spread to the skin and mucous membranes and forms the lesions, typical lesions, which are known as vesicles. So appearance of the typical lesions in this particular is very important point to remember here. And appearance of the vesicular lesions is the typical of this particular viral infections. So this, remember, from the dorsal root ganglion through the nerve endings, by means of centrifugal migration, and for the centrifugal migration reaches the skin and mucous membranes to produce the lesions on those particular areas. And then, see, these are all sometimes. So the HSV or herpes simplex virus will produce the typical lesion, that is vesicle. After an incubation period of 1 to 26 days, or the mean time, that is 6 to 8 days of the incubation period, you can see the vesicular lesions. So these are the typical vesicular lesions where you can see in case of, see here, there is a typical vesicular lesions where you can see in case of this particular viral infections. So let me know that what is vesicle. And first of all, let us have an idea. What is macule? Can anybody answer what is a macule? You can open the chat box and type. There are few important points you have to remember. What is macule? What is papule? What is vesicle? And what is pustule? So these are all the important type of wordings which come across you in case of herpes viral infections. So remember, macule means a circumscribed erythematous non-elevated lesion. A circumscribed, yeah, somebody has answered. Vesicular fluid field discoloration. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. I'll tell you. Macule means an erythematous circumscribed non-elevated lesion on the skin is known as macule. Then what is papule? Let me take the pen. What is the papule here? Here you can see the papule. What do you mean by papule? Again, erythematous circumscribed elevated lesion on the skin is known as papule. Circumscribed erythematous elevated lesion. But what is vesicle? Vesicle means a circumscribed erythematous or non-erythematous lesion which is filled with fluid, which is filled with clear fluid, is known as vesicle. So this appearance of vesicle is the typical of this particular fluid filled. Yes, vesicle is fluid filled. That is half correct, but correct answer is vesicle is a circumscribed elevated erythematous or non-erythematous fluid filled lesion is called vesicle. If that vesicle consists of pus, then that is known as pustule. So that's what macule, papule, vesicle and pustule. All these type of lesions you can see in the herpes viral infections. Anyhow, this vesicle starts as erythematous papule with the pain and tingling sensation, tingling sensation, and also it will have the itching also. After some time, it becomes thin-walled, umbilicated. A thin-walled umbilicated vesicle. That means the vesicle will have the depression in the center of the vesicle. That is called umbilicated lesion. And the roof breaks down on the center of the lesion and forms an ulcer along with fever. That's why they are known as cold sore or fever blisters. So the blisters associated with fever, that's why they are known as fever blisters or cold sore. And another important point to remember is clinical manifestations are more severe among the immunocompromised individual. If the individual is immunocompromised, then all these clinical manifestations would be very, very severe. And other clinical manifestations, how it presents. See, the first thing what we have to see is present in the form of orofacial mucosal lesions. Orofacial on the face as well as in the oral cavity, you can see the lesion. The most common site for these lesions is buccal mucosa. In the buccal mucosa, you can see these vesicular lesions. And here you can see the gingivitis. This is the gingivitis. It's a case of gingivitis where you can see, this is gingiva, the inflamed gingiva. The inflamed gingiva, you can see the redness as well as edematous gingiva. So this is inflamed gingiva, and gingivitis you can see the pharyngitis, you can have the inflammation of the tonsils, and sometimes you can see the painful vesicular lesions on the mucocutaneous junctions of the lips. And the mucocutaneous junctions of the lips you can see, and these lesions, this condition is known as herpes labialis. This is herpes labialis, where you can see the lesions on mucocutaneous junctions. Another important type of lesions which involves the system is nervous system, the encephalitis. Encephalitis is the most commonly produced by this herpes simplex virus. It is primary infection in case of children. In case of children, it's the primary infection, whereas in adults, it's a secondary reactivation infection. And adults, it's a reactivation, and it is seen in acute and sporadic form and mainly involves the temporal lobe. All these rounded areas are very, very important for you as far as the MCQs is concerned. These are all the MCQs related to the NEET examination when I have seen. In case of herpes simplex viral infection, which lobe is getting involved? That was an important MCQ on the NEET. So the temporal lobe get involved. Next one is meningitis, and the meningitis is seen in the recurrent forms. This is known as Mollaret's meningitis. So the meningitis produced in herpes simplex viral infections is known as Mollaret's meningitis. The typical nature of this meningitis is recurrence. Recurrence you can see in this particular case. And if you see the photographs, you can see the lips, the scabbed areas. Once the lesions are ruptured and see how the scab is formed, they can get healed without any scarification. This is very important point to remember. Always the herpes viral infections will get healed up without any scarification. Remember, there won't be any scar after the recovery of these particular lesions. And the dental anomalies followed by the herpes viral infection. Here you can see along the dental line, you can see how red and inflamed area. This entire thing is inflamed area in the dental region. So this is how it's inflamed, and in the lips also you can see the lesions, ruptured lesions. And here in the oral cavity, inside the cheek you can see the lesions. Inside the cheek you can see the vesicular lesions, and here once the lesions are occurred before the eruption of teeth, you can see the dental anomalies. See how the dental line is, how ugly the dental line is. So if the children are infected with these viruses before the tooth eruption, this is how you can see the dental anomalies. This has to remember regarding this herpes viral infections. Don't think that there's a very simple vesicular lesions, nothing to do any harm with the individual. No. It's in case of children, you can see the dental anomalies, how bad the dental line, either upper or lower dental line. So this is about the dental anomalies. And cutaneous lesions, you can see the hepatic whitlow. This is what actually now the baby is suffering in our case scenario. The toddlers and dentists. You all know that the toddlers will keep their finger and suck their thumb. That's a habit. And in case of dentists, this is the first finger which will enter the oral cavity most of the times by the dentist without having gloves also sometimes. If the dentist won't use the glove and the foot, keep the finger and the thumb in the patient's mouth, sometimes they may bite, or sometimes the dentist may have abrasions at the mucocutaneous junctions of the thumb, and the thumb, which may cause for the occurrence of these lesions. So that's why the dentists or toddlers commonly suffers with this herpetic whitlow, and fever blisters. The fever can provocate and cause for the blisters and the site of lesions. And herpetic gladiatorum, this is commonly seen in wrestlers. If the wrestlers, any wrestler among the two people, if anybody is suffering with this kind of lesions, in the wrestling process, they may touch with each other and cause for the transmission of this virus from one person to other person. And next one is eczema herpeticum. You know that what is the eczema? Eczema means it's an allergic manifestation where it exposes the skin. Here the skin has been exposed in the child or in the baby. And once the skin is exposed like this, the virus from the mother while handling may come and infect the baby. So these viruses are present in the salivary secretions. So while handling or while kissing, these viruses will transmit from there and infect the baby and forms the lesions. Since there are so many abrasions are there in the skin, and this virus from the mother or by the handler, infected handler, the virus will infect all the lesions present in the oral cavity, on the face, and cause for the severe form of rash. This rash is known as Kaposi's varicella rash and mainly produced by herpes simplex virus 1. Herpes simplex virus 1 will cause for this particular Kaposi's varicella rash, otherwise known as eczema herpeticum. So primarily eczema will give way for the viruses to enter into the skin and produces a rash. That rash is severe when compared to the regular type of rash. That's why it's known as Kaposi's varicella rash, seen among the individuals or among the children who are suffering with chronic eczema. This is what you have to remember. And the next one is the ocular lesions. Most commonly, the ocular lesions are produced by herpes simplex virus 1, and this is most common cause for corneal blindness after the trauma. Trauma is the foremost common cause for this one. After the trauma, the commonest cause for this virus causing for the blindness, corneal blindness, is herpes simplex virus 1. And they produce typical lesions which are known as dendritic ulcers. Dendritic means branching ulcers. You can see here how the branching lesions, how they're showing branching. Here you can see the branching, not like a crater like. You can see the branches here. You can see the branches in the ulcer. This kind of dendritic ulcer you can see on cornea because of this particular viral infection. And also you can also see the acute keratoconjunctivitis with the swelling and vesicles on the eyelid. On eyelid you can see the swelling and vesicles, and you can see the follicular keratoconjunctivitis also. Which bacteria can produce this acute keratoconjunctivitis and follicular keratoconjunctivitis? Or follicular conjunctivitis at least? Which bacteria? I myself discussed about this particular topic. Anybody? You can chat the chat box. Which bacteria will cause for the follicular conjunctivitis? What about chlamydia? Chlamydia, will it cause for the follicular conjunctivitis or not? Yeah, now they are responding, not brucella. No, it's not brucella. Yeah, that is the chlamydial infections, right? Let me move on. And next one is visceral herpes. This visceral herpes is not commonly seen among the people. Yeah, the other person. Yeah, chlamydia trachomatis, very good. 270, 1270. Congratulations. but you would have answered before my response. I already answered. Anyhow, very good. So visceral herpes, this is common among the people who are suffering with the immunocompromised state. So immunocompromised state, AIDS patient, pregnant woman, and after the transplantation, the people may suffer with visceral herpes in the form of pneumonitis, in the form of tracheobronchitis, and in the form of hepatitis. So these are the common types of presentations in the visceral herpes when the people are immunologically compromised. And next one is herpes simplex virus 2. It mainly produces genital lesions transmitted either by auto-infection or by sexual or orogenital contact. This is the most common mode of transmission for herpes simplex virus 2 infection. Abnormal sexual practices are responsible for transmission of this particular virus. The lesions are bilateral on both sides, you can see, and they're painful, and most important thing is there are multiple lesions. You can see the multiple lesions with fever and local lymphadenopathy. Local inguinal lymph nodes gets involved. They maintain the latency in the sacral nerve ganglion, which leads to sacral radiculopathy, which finally results in urinary retention. In case of females, this is a very important complication with herpes simplex 2 viral infection, that is urinary retention. And now you can see the various lesions produced. One is the perianal herpes. Around the anus, you can see the herpes lesions like this. And on the shaft of the penis, you can see the lesions like this. And on the prepuce, you can see the lesions like this, ulceration. These are all the ulcers. And in the labia, you can see, especially in the labia minora, you can see the lesions like this. So inside the line, you can see the ulcerated lesions. So like this, in genital area, you can see the various lesions with this herpes simplex virus. And one most important point to remember is this latency. The latency in the sacral ganglion results in sacral radiculopathy, finally results in urinary retention. That is very important point to remember as far as the females is concerned, especially. Yeah, what is this? We'll start video later. Okay. Next, the neonatal herpes. In case of neonatal herpes, this is the most common causes herpes simplex virus 2. And mortality, if you won't treat the case, the mortality would be around 65%. So neonatal herpes leads to severe mortality and transmission. How the neonates will get the infection? It may be either through the utero, that means vertical transmission from the mother to the baby. If the infected mother is there, then during her pregnancy, she can transmit the virus through the placenta. And during the birth, if any mother is suffering with the genital herpes, you are not supposed to allow the mother to go for normal delivery. You should not allow the mother to go for normal delivery. You have to advise to go for cesarean section only. You have to allow the mother to go for cesarean section only, not for the normal delivery. And now, how this neonatal herpes will present? This presentation, it may be either in the local form or in the systemic form. If it is the local form, you can see here, the skin is getting involved here, the skin lesions you can see, and you can see the lesions in the eye. The eyes also, both eyes are involved, and you can see the lesions inside the mouth also. So the eyes, mouth and skin, all these three areas gets involved in case of neonatal herpes. But in systemic form, mainly involves the brain in the form of meningitis. Aseptic meningitis is common in case of systemic form of neonatal herpes. And the next one is epidemiological aspects. Herpes simplex virus, exclusively human disease. HSV 1 and 2, you can see only in human beings. Infected person acts as lifelong source because of latency. because of latency. Once the person is infected, the virus would be there in her or his body throughout the life. And aerosol do not transmit, only through the secretions and through the aspirations it can enter into the body, not by means of aerosols. Especially herpes simplex virus 1 and 2 never get transmitted through the aerosols. And children are at risk for getting HSV1 and sexually active people HSV2. So children for HSV1 and sexually adults and adolescents usually suffers with herpes simplex virus 2. And herpes simplex virus 1 is more common when compared to the more common than the herpes simplex virus 2. And one more important point which you have to remember is, by the age of 25 to 30, majority, nearly 80% of the low socio-economic group individuals will become seropositive. So by means of contact, by the age of 25 to 30, most of the people will become seropositive. That means you can detect either IgM or IgG antibodies in the serum, even though they are not suffering with the clinical manifestations. And another important thing is, there's not only in US, in majority of the 1256 roll number, I think as, do you hear me? 1256. Okay. So it's a major problem in US, not only US, because of the changing lifestyles all over the world. You can see this kind of cases. And if you see the lab diagnosis, and you have to take the scrapings, especially from the primary vesicular lesion. From the primary vesicular lesions, you have to get the scrapings, and which is more important than the recurrent lesions. After doing either right stain or GMSA stain, you can see the multinucleated giant cells. You can see the multinucleated giant cells with faceted nuclei and marginal. See here in the margin, you can see the chromatin. And also the ground glass chromatin. And this is the typical appearance of this particular lesions. You can see this is one nucleus, this is one nucleus, another nucleus. So multiple or multinucleated giant cells are seen, and this kind of cells are known as Jung cells, which is very important 2 marks question for you in theory. Jung cells is a typical of herpes viral infections. And another important thing is, if you like to culture them either on HeLa or Hep2 cell line cultures, you can see the cytopathic effects within 2 to 4 days, where you can see the Cowdrey type A intranuclear inclusion bodies. Since it's a DNA virus, you can see the nuclear, inclusion bodies inside the nucleus of the cell. These are known as Cowdrey type A intranuclear inclusion bodies. You know that the Cowdrey classified the intranuclear antibodies into Cowdrey type A and Cowdrey type B. Some are irregular, some are uniform in size. So Cowdrey type A intranuclear inclusion bodies are irregular in shape, and they're also known as Lipschultz bodies. Inside here, you can see the eosinophilic inclusion bodies. Here inside, this entire thing is a cell. How it is become big, and inside the cell, this is the nucleus. Inside the nucleus, again, you can see the pink colored cells. Here also you can see the pink colored eosinophilic. These are all the pink colored eosinophilic bodies. These are all pink colored eosinophilic bodies inside the infected cell. So this is the typical of these inclusion bodies inside the cell. You can see here, this is the one pink colored Cowdrey type A intranuclear inclusion bodies. You can see is the typical of this cytopathic effects. And if you would like to diagnose by means of viral antigen detection, you have immunofluorescent techniques. You have the immunofluorescent, take the scrapings and use the monoclonal antibodies tagged with immunofluorescent dye, and then you have to see under the immunofluorescent microscope. Then you can detect the viral antigen, which is more reliable when compared to the antibody detection. Anyhow, we have the antibody detection methods also we have, either by means of ELISA or by means of indirect immunofluorescent technique. So for the antibodies, you can see the thing like this. Again, here also monoclonal antibodies have to be used. By means of a sandwich technique. By using the sandwich technique, by means of ELISA, we can detect the antibodies, either IgM or IgG antibodies. And another important thing is HSV DNA detection that is herpes simplex viral DNA by the PCR method. And this is another, that's of course almost the end test. So if you are able to detect, if you are able to use this PCR, that will give the end result. And treatment, mucocutaneous infections give simple acyclovir or famciclovir, and in case of ocular infections, give the topical edoxyridine or vidarabine, and in case of encephalitis, drug of choice is acyclovir. And remember, this is very important. Encephalitis or aseptic meningitis produce the virus which is treatable. The treatable aseptic meningitis is produced by the herpes simplex virus. Most of the other viral infections may result in mortality, associated with much mortality. But remember, herpes simplex virus is not associated with much mortality because acyclovir will give very good response for this particular clinical condition. And another thing is acyclovir resistant cases. It's a common in HSV2 infections among the immunocompromised individuals. So if any immunocompromised individuals suffering with HSV2 infections, then they may be resistant to acyclovir. Then you have to go for foscarnet. Foscarnet is the drug of choice for acyclovir resistant cases of herpes simplex viral infections. Next one is in this particular category, varicella zoster virus. This is very simple topic, and here the secretions from lesions are aerosols. Remember here, when compared to the HSV1 2, varicella zoster can get transmitted by means of inhalation of aerosols, whereas HSV1 and HSV2 can get transmitted through the skin abrasions or abrasions in the mucous membranes, but varicella zoster can get transmitted through the aerosols. The secretions by means of inhalation can get transmitted from the infected individual to the normal individual. So they get infected and transmitted to the respiratory mucosa or through the conjunctiva. Even secretions, when the conjunctiva exposed to the conjunctiva, people can get infected. So how the pathogenesis will occur? So this varicella zoster virus enters through the respiratory tract, and from there, by means of local infection, enter into the blood and produce primary viremia or first grade viremia. And from this first grade viremia, they spread to the spleen and liver, and now causes for second grade or secondary viremia. And through the secondary viremia, it reaches the skin and produce the rash-like lesions. And not only the rash-like lesions, they enter into the dorsal root ganglia of the spinal cord and maintains the latent infection. So after an infection, these viruses not only produce the skin rash, but also maintain their latent infection in the dorsal root ganglion, which may cause for the infection in future, right? And the incubation period for this one is 7 to 23 days, otherwise called 1 to 3 weeks duration. And this varicella zoster will be manifested in two forms. Among them, one is chickenpox. Chickenpox is one form, which is a mild exanthema in children, which is characterized by the fever, pharyngitis, malaise, and rhinitis. I hope you know what is the meaning for Malaise. I think you can answer for pharyngitis or rhinitis. Malaise means a kind of discomfort, a kind of feeling illness is called malaise. A feeling of discomfort or feeling of illness is called malaise. Yes, somebody answered. Feeling of uneasiness. Very good. Yes, wonderful answer. That is the correct answer. There's a feeling of something illness is malaise. And vesicular rash also you can see. You can see the vesicular rash, and this vesicular rash is seen in the form of water drop like. In early stage of the rash, you can see it in the form of water drop like. But remember, this vesicular rash will pass through the various steps. That is from macula to vesicular stage. First macula will appear. That's what I already mentioned when I was talking about herpes simplex virus. Macula means a circumscribed erythematous non-elevated lesion. Non-elevated lesion on the skin is called macula. This macula will become papular lesion. Here also you can see some papular lesion. This is a papilla. This is a papilla, and this papilla after some time will become vesicular lesion, and if it's filled with clear fluid. But if you see here in these lesions, in all these lesions, you can see the clear pus filled. So this is pustule. So after the vesicle, the next stage would be this pustular lesion. This pustular lesion is not due to the bacterial infection, but this vesicular fluid filled with many number of macrophages. So damages to those macrophages by the viruses results in pus formation within the cell. That's not because of secondary bacterial infection. Remember, even though it's possible with secondary bacterial infection, but all these lesions will first start like macula, then papilla, then vesicle, then pustular lesion. Later they can get crushed or ruptured, results in scab formation. That's why all these lesions are seen in the form of crops. So they appear in crops. That means all types of lesions you can see in an individual. Macula you can see, and if you see here, these are all macular lesions. These are all macular lesions. But if you see here, these are papillar lesions. And vesicles are not able to show here, but I can show here the pustular lesions. So that's why the different crops are seen, and these are all centripetal distribution. That means you can see the lesions in the central part of the body, and they are diffuse in nature and profuse in adults. If the mother is infected, it can cross the placenta, results in neuromuscular disorders. It may result in neuromuscular disorder, which is very important point to remember. So in the fetal or congenital varicella syndrome, you can, if you this more severe if the mother is infected during the early pregnancy. During the early pregnancy, it may cause for it. And here the most important thing is they are highly teratogenic. Congenital anomalies are very common in the form of limb hypoplasia. Here you can see when compared to this limb, you can see this limb, a right limb, hypoplasia of the limb. Compare the left leg with the right leg. So this is hypoplasia, which is very common. And you can see the microcephaly and mental retardation also, and chorioretinitis also seen in individual. And some other abnormalities like hydrouretus and low birth weight also can be seen in this congenital varicella syndrome. And neonatal herpes, when varicella, you can see the mother is infected just 5 days before the delivery. Just 5 days before the delivery is infected with this one, which may result in neonatal varicella, which manifests in the form of severe chickenpox and mortalities around 30% in these particular infections. And the herpes zoster shingles, creeping gutter is the last one. When the individual infected primarily with this herpes zoster virus, varicella zoster virus, and it maintains the latency, and this latent virus will get reactivated in the 5th or 6th decade of life. But on that particular time, it won't manifest it in the form of chickenpox. It will be manifested in the form of herpes zoster. So the same virus will cause the two types of lesions. One is chickenpox, Another is herpes zoster. So anybody comes in contact with the herpes zoster, they may suffer with chicken pox. Directly, the herpes zoster will not get manifested. The herpes zoster is a reactivation of the chicken pox. The reactivation of chicken pox is nothing but herpes zoster. It's always followed by the chemotherapy, high steroid usage, and followed by the radiotherapy and the herpes virus. HIV viral infection, where the cell-mediated immunity gets decreased. When it gets decreased, which results in the reactivation virus and manifests in the form of shingles, where you can see the lesions in the thoracic region. So the reactivation of the virus present in the dorsal root or cranial nerve ganglia results in the lesions like this, where you can see the painful vesicular rashes. Remember, they are very highly painful. Sometimes the individual may commit suicide also because of the severe painful condition of these lesions. So the reactivation of this varicella zoster virus is a highly troublesome condition, which are unilateral and segmental, very commonly seen on either side of the body, on one side of the body. Sometimes this viral activation occurs in the trigeminal area. This may result in an ophthalmic nerve area. You can see the lesions like this. I think you can see the other side, left side of the body's face is quite normal, whereas on the right side you can see the many number of lesions. So that's what nothing but unilateral. Their unilateral distribution results in involves the eye, that is known as herpes zoster ophthalmicus. This is called herpes zoster ophthalmicus. This is called shingles or creeping girdle. These are the different types of presentations by the reactivation of varicella zoster virus. Remember, these are all because of varicella. So whenever the person comes in contact with this particular condition, primarily those people may suffer with the chicken pox, remember. And this complications in adults, secondary bacterial infection and varicella pneumonia in case of pregnant woman. In children, the most important complication is cerebellar ataxia. Varicella zoster virus mainly causes for cerebellar ataxia, encephalitis and aseptic meningitis. And whenever the baby or individual is suffering with the chicken pox or the herpes zoster, don't use the aspirin. In case of varicella zoster or chicken pox, don't use the aspirin. It may result in Ray's syndrome. That is nothing but fatty degeneration of the liver. Fatty degeneration of the liver is possible in case of Ray's syndrome, followed by usage of aspirin. So the best drug to be used in case of chicken pox to reduce the fever is paracetamol. Paracetamol is a drug of choice. Don't use aspirin at all. That is acetyl salicylic acid, which may result in severe complication, that is Ray's syndrome. So these are the complications with this varicella zoster virus. So another thing is lab diagnosis, same as that of herpes simplex virus. If you write the same thing as in case of herpes simplex virus 1 and 2, that is always related to the varicella zoster also. Just that's all. And treatment, acyclovir or famciclovir, the drugs of choices, but in IV acyclovir has to be given in immunocompromised individuals. And vaccine is available, that is live attenuated varicella vaccine prepared with Waka strain is available, which has to be given at the more than 1 year age. It should not be given before 1 year age. It has to be given in the form of 2 doses, 6 months apart. First dose has to be given at the end of first year, and second dose has to be given at the age of 18 months. It gives protection around more than 80% of cases. And you can give the varicella zoster immunoglobulins also. And when the person in the post-exposure prophylaxis, you can give this varicella zoster immunoglobulins. And for the immunocompromised individuals and for the neonates who born to the infected mothers. The neonates who born to infected mothers, or in case of post-exposure prophylaxis, you have to give this varicella zoster immunoglobulins, right? I think this is the end of this this particular topic. So this is the take-home message of this class. If you love something, set it free. Just don't be surprised if it comes back with herpes. So I hope you can understand the meaning of it. And so always be careful about this herpes viral infections and the changing of lifestyles and abnormal lifestyles may cause for the transmission of this particular viral infections.